Quinn Shepherd stood behind the counter of his tiny auto repair garage, brushing grease off his hands with a rag as the front door burst open, and a woman in heels and panic stormed in. "My car's smoking actually smoking, and I don't know if it's going to explode or just fall apart, and I have a meeting in 20 minutes, and I can't." "Hey," Quinn said calmly, stepping around the counter, voice low and even. "Take a breath, you're okay." The woman froze, eyes wide. She looked completely out of place, tailored pants, silk blouse, a watch on her wrist that probably cost more than Quinn made in a month. Her chest rose and fell fast, and her fingers clutched her handbag like it was a life raft. "I am sorry," she said, voice shaking. "Just my GPS took me down some weird road, and then the car started making this awful noise, and now." "Let me take a look," he said gently, tilting his head toward the parking lot. She hesitated, then nodded, following him outside. Her black SUV sat crooked in the lot, hood still cracked open, and a faint trail of smoke curling into the air. Quinn leaned over the engine, frowning. "You're lucky it didn't catch fire," he muttered. "Radiator blew, probably overheated." She looked like she was trying not to cry. "Can you fix it, like now?" "I can try," he said, glancing at her again. "But it'll take at least a couple of hours, and even then, no guarantees." She groaned, stepping back. Of course, this day was already a mess. I don't even know where I am." "Silver Pine," he said, wiping his hands again. "Small town, no traffic, lots of trees. Not a bad place to break down." She let out a breathy laugh, and for the first time, Quinn saw something soften in her eyes. "I'm Noelle Ashford." "Quinn," he said, nodding. "You're welcome to wait inside. I've got coffee. It's not good, but it's hot." She hesitated, then followed him back into the garage. The waiting area was small, two mismatched chairs, a coffee machine that looked like it belonged in a museum, and a toy bin in the corner. A little boy sat cross-legged on the floor with a toy fire truck, humming to himself. "That's my son," Quinn said as he poured the coffee. "Jace, he's 5. He insisted on coming to work with me today because it's his dad day." Noel glanced at the boy, then back at Quinn. "You're a single dad." "Yeah," he said simply. "Jace's mom left when he was 2, haven't heard from her since." Noel took the coffee with both hands, wrapping her fingers around the cup like it was the only warm thing in the room. "You seem calm. Most people would be annoyed with someone like me showing up and panicking." Quinn shrugged. "You looked like you needed someone to be calm." She stared at him for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you." Later, while Quinn worked under the hood, Noel sat on the sidewalk with Jace, helping him build towers out of old oil filter boxes. She didn't seem like someone who'd ever sat on concrete in heels before, but she didn't complain. And Jace, who usually took a while to warm up to strangers, was laughing like he'd known her forever. "You're good with him," Quinn said, wiping sweat off his temple as he stepped out from the garage. "He doesn't usually talk much to new people." "He's sweet," Noel said, brushing her hair back. "And you're good with him too. You're doing a great job." He looked away, throat tightening. "A try." She hesitated. Do you do this full-time, the garage?" "Yeah, took it over from my dad. It's not much, but it pays the bills, most months." She studied him for a long moment, then looked down. "I'm sorry if I messed up your day." "You didn't," he said. "Believe it or not, this is the most interesting thing that's happened this week." She laughed again, but this time it was softer, almost grateful. By late afternoon, Quinn had finished patching the radiator. "It'll hold for now," he said, handing her back the keys. "But you should get a full replacement when you're back in the city. Don't push it." She took the keys slowly, then reached into her handbag. "How much do I owe you?" He waved it off. "Call it a favor, you needed help. I was here." She blinked. "You don't want anything." "You already gave Jace a fun afternoon," he said with a shrug. That's enough." She stared at him like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I don't usually do this," she said, "but would you want to have dinner sometime?" Quinn blinked. "You want to have dinner with me?" "I do," she said, "unless that's weird." He glanced at Jace, who was now asleep on the couch in the waiting room, then back at Noelle. "It's not weird, but I should warn you I don't do fancy. Most nights, dinner's grilled cheese with dinosaur-shaped ketchup." She smiled. "I like grilled cheese." They exchanged numbers old school, written on a receipt, and she drove off, waving through the window. Quinn stood there long after she was gone, staring at the road. He had no idea that the woman who just sat on his garage floor playing with his son was worth over $2 billion. And Noelle had no idea why this man with grease-stained hands and quiet eyes had just made her heartbeat feel like it was waking up for the first time in years. 3 days passed before Noelle called. Quinn had just finished rinsing soap off Jace's hair in the clawfoot tub when the landline rang. His cell had been dead for weeks. He wrapped Jace in a towel, set him down with a bowl of cereal and a stack of crayons, and picked up the receiver with damp hands. "Hi, it's Noelle." He leaned against the wall, surprised by the flicker of something warm and unwelcome in his chest. "Hey. I've been trying to find a time that made sense to call." Her voice was quieter now, like she wasn't used to sounding unsure. "Does tonight work?" He glanced at the clock. "You mean for dinner?" "Well, I meant to say hello first," she laughed faintly. "But yes, if you're free." Quinn exhaled slowly. "I need someone to watch Jace." "I can help with that," she said quickly. "I mean, not me personally. I could arrange someone. A background-checked, fully vetted sitter from the agency I use for my godchildren when they visit. I'll pay for everything." "You don't have to do that." "I want to." He hesitated, then said, "All right, where?" "Do you like oysters?" "I've never had 'em." "Perfect," she said. "Let me send a car. I'll tell the driver to wait, just in case you hate it." That evening, as twilight sank over Silverpine, a black sedan pulled up in front of the duplex Quinn rented behind the gas station. He stepped out in the only button-down shirt he owned that didn't have a stain on it and kissed Jace's forehead, before handing him off to the sitter, an older woman with kind eyes who arrived exactly 15 minutes before the car. The drive into the city was quiet. He'd never seen this much glass in one place. Buildings rose like pillars of light, and the restaurant Pearl, the driver said, sat at the top of a boutique hotel with a velvet rope and a line of people in clothes worth more than Quinn's truck. When the elevator doors opened on the penthouse level, Noelle was already waiting. She wore a cream-colored coat draped over her shoulders and a pair of heels that looked like they'd been designed for walking clouds, not streets. Her hair was twisted up, and sparkling earrings brushed the base of her throat. "You clean up nice," she said, eyes flicking over him. "I was gonna say the same," he replied, then added, "but that feels like a lie. You look like you walked out of a magazine." She laughed. "Come on, I got us a window table." From their seats, the city spread out beneath them like a sea of fireflies. A waiter appeared with menus and a chilled bottle of something Quinn couldn't pronounce. "I asked them to chill a local beer for you too," Noelle said, eyes dancing, "just in case you hate champagne." He relaxed slightly. "You think of everything." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she rested her elbow on the table and tilted her head. "I've been thinking a lot, about you, about Jace, about that garage." He met her gaze. "You grew up with money." "No," she folded her napkin slowly. "I grew up watching my dad take 3 buses to work. My mom worked nights at a hospital cafeteria. They saved every dollar they made, so could go to a private school on a scholarship." Quinn blinked. "Then how did you end up flying in cars and reserving rooftop restaurants?" I built a tech company, sold it just before it turned 29, she said simply. It got acquired by a conglomerate. I stayed on the board. Now I mostly invest. He sat back, letting that settle. So you're not rich, you're very rich, she finished, not embarrassed. I didn't want to tell you at the garage because I knew what would happen. What do you think would have happened? You'd have treated me differently, she said. Or worse, not at all. Quinn considered that. You're probably right. Their food arrived plated like art. She walked him through which oyster to try first, then grinned as he made a face. You hate it. Tastes like the ocean punched me in the mouth. She laughed so hard, she had to set down her fork. Later, over dessert, she leaned in. Can I ask you something? Sure, he said, watching as she carefully broke off a piece of something chocolate and gold dusted. Does it scare you, me having all this? He didn't answer immediately. It scares me that I might start liking it. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, I want to see you again. He nodded. I'd like that. As they stepped into the private elevator, she stopped him with a hand on his forearm. Quinn. Yeah. I'm not offering you a life of luxury, she said softly. I'm offering you me. The rest is just noise. He swallowed, then I'll try to hear past it. Back in the car, he stared out the window the whole way home. He didn't know what scared him more, how fast it was happening, or how right it felt. When he stepped back into the house, Jace was asleep on the couch with a blanket over him and a crayon still in his hand. Quinn kissed the top of his head and whispered, I think we're in trouble, buddy. But somewhere deep down, he wasn't sure he meant that in a bad way. Noelle didn't wait long to call again. 2 days after their dinner, she invited Quinn and Jace to a private art exhibit she was sponsoring downtown, something family-friendly, she promised. Quinn almost turned her down. The idea of stepping into her world, fully and publicly, made something tighten in his chest. But when Jace overheard and asked if there would be sculptures of dinosaurs, Noelle didn't hesitate. There's a metal T-Rex taller than your dad, she said over the phone, and it breathes fog. So on Saturday morning, Quinn dressed Jace in his best jeans and wiped chocolate from his cheek before they boarded the same black sedan from before. The driver handed Jace a juice box on cue, like it had been planned. Quinn's stomach twisted. The gallery was in a converted warehouse with massive skylights and soft music playing from unseen speakers. Inside, children ran between installations while their parents sipped espresso from glass cups. Everything gleamed: polished floors, suspended lights, even the abstract sculptures that caught the sun like they'd been dipped in stardust. Noelle stood near the entrance, laughing at something a curator said. Her dress was simple, sleeveless, and pale blue. When she spotted them, her face lit up in a way Quinn hadn't seen before, not even at the restaurant. You made it, she said, crouching down to Jace's level. You ready to see the dinosaur? Jace nodded, eyes wide. I'll take him, she said to Quinn. Go get a coffee. You look like you haven't blinked since you walked in. He stepped toward the refreshment table, but not far. He kept her and Jace in his line of sight as she led him to the mechanical T-Rex installation. Jace's laughter echoed off the walls. Is he yours? A voice asked. Quinn turned. A tall man in a fitted blazer, silver streaks in his hair, held a champagne flute like it was part of his anatomy. Yeah. You're with Noelle. Quinn nodded once. The man gave a slow smile. I'm Charles Avery, Ashford Capital's general counsel. Quinn didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. She doesn't bring people here, not even board members, not even friends. This, Charles gestured around the room, this is a statement. Quinn's jaw tightened. I thought it was a kid's exhibit. Oh, it is, Charles said, but Noelle makes statements in the quietest ways. Noel returned with Jace, who was now holding a miniature sculpture of the T-Rex. His cheeks were red from excitement. "We need to go see the jellyfish next," he whispered to Quinn. "You bribed him," Quinn said, raising an eyebrow at Noel. She smiled, offered him a choice. "That's different." Charles nodded politely and excused himself. "Who was that?" Quinn asked. "Avery. He's been with my family's business since I was in college. He probably warned you not to trust me." He said this was a statement. Noel tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "It is. I'm not trying to hide you or Jace. I know this world of mine is polished and weird, but I don't want to keep you separate from it." Quinn looked around. "This isn't exactly my scene." "I know," she said, "but you're still standing." They moved through the rest of the exhibit together, Jace bouncing between them like a pinball. At one point, he ran ahead and nearly collided with a glass installation. Quinn caught him just in time and crouched down. "Hey," he said, voice low, "you gotta stay close, all right." Jace nodded, eyes wide. Quinn rested a hand on the back of his head and stood, only to find Noel watching them. "You're good with him," she said. "You've said that." "I wasn't finished," she replied. "You're good for him." It was the first time Quinn didn't feel like the floor might be ripped out from under him. After the exhibit, Noel invited them to lunch at a rooftop cafe nearby. Jace fell asleep in the booth after 2 bites of grilled cheese. The breeze tugged gently at the linen awning above them, and the two of them sat in the hush that only comes after a child's breathing turns even. "I've been thinking," she said, eyes on the skyline. "There's a development project I've been avoiding. It's a mess: mismanaged contracts, shoddy equipment, workers not getting paid on time. I was going to pull out." "Sounds like a nightmare," Quinn said. "It is, but don't want to abandon the people. I was thinking, maybe I could use someone like you, someone who knows what it's like to fix things from the ground up." Quinn narrowed his eyes. "You want to hire me?" "No," she said. "I want to trust you with something, let you oversee the rebuild, clean it up without the politics." He leaned back, arms crossed. "That's a hell of a leap." "I've made bigger ones," she said, voice steady. "I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a job you're qualified for, one where you don't have to patch radiators just to stay afloat." He looked down at Jace, who was curled against his side. "I'd need to know more," he said finally. "Of course. And I won't take it if it means being someone I'm not." "I'd never ask you to be," she said. The ride back to Silver Pine was quiet, Jace asleep in the backseat. Noel barely touched her phone, fingers tracing something invisible on her knee. When they pulled up to the curb outside Quinn's house, she turned to him. "I don't want to rush this," she said, "but I also don't want to pretend it's casual." Quinn nodded slowly, "Then let's not pretend." She leaned over and kissed his cheek, just once before stepping out of the car. Inside, Jace stirred and mumbled, "Did the T-Rex like me?" Quinn carried him to bed, heart doing something unfamiliar in his chest. Not pounding, not racing. Hopeful. The construction site in Northridge was a disaster. Quinn stood at the edge of the lot, boots crunching on gravel, watching a backhoe idle while 2 workers argued over missing materials. A storage container had been broken into the night before. Half the copper wiring was gone. The foreman looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "This is what you want me to fix?" Quinn asked without turning around. "It's worse than I described, isn't it?" Noel said from beside him, arms crossed, blazer sleeves pushed up to her elbows. "I inherited this site through an acquisition. I tried to make progress without stepping in directly, but it's clear now someone has to. And that someone's me." "They won't listen to a corporate suit," she said, "but they might listen to someone who knows what it's like to sink into the dirt and build from scratch." Quinn glanced at a frayed rope dangling from a crane and nodded. All right, I'll need full authority to hire, restructure, and replace every supplier if they are not delivering. You'll have it. And I want the crew paid weekly, not monthly. On time. Done. He turned to face her. And I don't want my name used to clean your image. She looked up at him, eyes steady. If I needed a PR stunt, I'd hire an actor. I hired you. Quinn stepped onto the site and waved for the foreman to come over. By noon, he'd pulled together the crew, reassigned tasks, and called in a contact from Silverpine to replace the missing wiring. He didn't bark orders he didn't have to. The men watched his movements with quiet respect. He worked beside them, hands stained with rust by the time the sun dipped behind the scaffolding. Noelle stayed through it all. She didn't hover, didn't interrupt. Just observed quietly, thoughtfully until she finally left with a nod and a small smile. That evening, when Quinn got home, Jace was already in pajamas, building a fort from every blanket in the house. The sitter handed Quinn a note before heading out. It was folded in thirds, written in Noelle's handwriting. You don't need to fit into my world, you just changed it. He tucked the note into his wallet. The days that followed moved fast. The site transformed under his leadership. Word spread, and by the end of the second week, the regional inspector stopped by unannounced and left impressed. The workers began arriving early, staying late, and for the first time in months, there were no delays. Noelle visited often, but never to interfere. Sometimes she brought coffee. Other times, she just stood at the edge of the chaos, arms crossed, letting the wind pull strands of her hair loose. One afternoon, she walked with Quinn to his truck. He was wiping his hands on a rag, and she was unusually quiet. You all right? He asked. She hesitated. My father's holding a benefit gala this weekend, all very black tie and polished shoes. I usually skip them, but this time, he asked for you by name. Quinn raised an eyebrow. Charles told him about you, she added. I think he's curious. Curious what kind of man his daughter's seeing. Something like that. Quinn looked down at his calloused hands. You sure it won't embarrass you? You've never once embarrassed me, she said. But if you show up in jeans, my mother might faint. He laughed under his breath. All right, I'll borrow a suit. At the gala, Quinn felt like a utility wrench in a room full of gold-plated cutlery. The ballroom sparkled literally. Chandelier light played off crystal glasses and the polished marble floor. Waiters flowed like currents, and every conversation seemed to hover just above his head, full of names he didn't recognize. But then Noelle appeared at the top of the stairs in a dark navy gown, hair swept into a low twist, and the moment she reached his side, none of it mattered. You okay? She asked quietly. Every time someone says quail egg foam, want to ask if they're joking. She grinned. Come on, my father wants to meet you. Quinn followed her through the crowd to a corner where a tall man stood beside a silver-haired woman with sharp eyes. They both wore expressions that gave nothing away. Dad, this is Quinn Shepherd, Noelle said. Her father extended a hand. You run the site in North Ridge. Quinn shook it. Yes, sir. I've read the reports. Impressive turnaround. You've got a reputation for making things work with less. Sometimes less is just what people call the right tools that don't shine. The older man raised an eyebrow, then nodded slowly. I like him. Noelle's mother didn't speak, but she glanced at Noelle's hand resting lightly on Quinn's arm and gave the faintest tilt of her head a gesture that wasn't approval, exactly, but perhaps the absence of disapproval. That was more than enough. After the dinner, Quinn led Noelle out onto the balcony where the city stretched beneath them like a sea of stars. You were quiet during the speeches, she said, leaning against the railing. Didn't want to say the wrong thing. You couldn't, she said softly. He turned to face her. I've been thinking about something. Tell me. I want to build something real, not just buildings, a life, something Jace can grow up watching, something steady. She stepped closer, with me. With you, he said, if you want that. I do, she said instantly. I want a home that doesn't feel like another investment property. I want someone who shows up for dinner even if it's just grilled cheese. I want Jace to have a backyard and a dog and a dad who smiles more than he worries. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box, not new, not flashy, but carefully held. He opened it to reveal a simple ring. No diamonds, just gold. I know this isn't what you're used to, he said, but it's what I have, and it's real. Noelle blinked, and for the first time since he met her, her voice wavered. It's perfect, she whispered. He slid it onto her finger, and she kissed him slow, certain, and full of something deeper than excitement. It was promise. They were married in a garden behind the restored North Ridge building 6 weeks later. The workers built the arbor. Jace carried the rings. Noelle walked barefoot down the aisle, laughing when her heels caught in the grass. There were no reporters, no press releases. Just a man who once lived paycheck to paycheck, holding the hand of a woman who could have bought the whole town and chose, instead, to build a life with him. And in the middle of it all, a little boy who finally had what he'd quietly wanted all along. A home where laughter came easy and love never had to be earned. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows, casting soft gold across the weathered wood floors. Quinn stood barefoot, flipping pancakes while Jace sat at the counter, coloring a cardboard rocket ship they'd built the night before. Noelle leaned against the doorway, hair still damp from the shower, a cup of coffee cupped in her hands as she watched them. She had officially moved into the house 2 weeks ago, and while the place was still the same 2-bedroom duplex behind the gas station, it felt different now. Warmer. Fuller. The scent of fresh paint still clung to the walls where they'd let Jace choose the color for his room. He'd picked something between sky and ocean. Mom, Jace said, not looking up, do you think we could build a real rocket one day? I think with your dad's tools and your imagination, we'd be unstoppable, she replied, walking over to kiss the top of his head. Quinn placed a plate in front of her. Don't get too confident. Last week we tried to fix the lawnmower and nearly flooded the backyard. I thought that was on purpose, she teased, sitting beside Jace. He grinned. It was for the frogs. After breakfast, they packed a picnic and drove out to the small lake on the edge of town. It had become a favorite spot, a quiet escape, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Jace chased dragonflies near the water while Quinn spread out a blanket, and Noelle unpacked the food. You know, she said as she passed him a sandwich, I never thought I'd feel this. Settled. Quinn sat beside her. Is that a good thing? It's the best thing, she said. When I was younger, I thought success meant movement. Always traveling, always building the next thing. But this, she nodded toward Jace, who was now trying to stack rocks into a tower, this is the first time I've ever wanted to stay still. He watched her for a moment. I've been thinking about something. She raised an eyebrow. You're not about to tell me you want another dog, are you? Tempting, he said. But no, I've been offered the chance to buy the empty lot next to the garage. Her expression lit with curiosity. What would you do with it? Build something bigger, better, not just a repair shop, something that teaches, a place where kids can learn trades, where people who didn't go to college can find another path. She blinked. That's incredible. I wouldn't have even considered it a year ago, he said, but now, with you, I feel like I can do more, be more. She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Then do it. I'll help however you need, financially or otherwise. I want to build it myself, he said. But if you happen to know any zoning lawyers who accept pancakes as payment, I might need an introduction." She laughed, and they sat in the sun, watching Jace skip stones across the water, the ripples stretching toward the far shore. Later that night, after Jace had fallen asleep clutching a flashlight and a stuffed bear, Quinn and Noelle curled up together on the living room couch. It had started to rain, light and steady against the windows. The kind of rain that made the world feel hushed. "I've been asked to speak at a summit in Geneva next month," she said quietly. "They want me to talk about sustainable tech and female leadership." "You should go," he said. "I want to take you, and Jace." He looked at her. "You think they're ready for a kid who believes every suitcase should hold at least 3 toy cars and a jar of peanut butter." "They'll survive," she said. "Besides, I'm not interested in going if I can't share it, not anymore." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Let's go, then." They sat in silence for a while, her head on his chest, the storm outside softening into a lullaby. Months passed, and the lot next to the garage was cleared, surveyed, and framed. Noelle handled the legal hurdles while Quinn oversaw the construction. They called it the workshop a space for hands-on learning, mentorship, and second chances. Jace painted a mural on one of the walls, a giant wrench and a rocket ship. Their wedding had been small, but their life was large, not in size or expense, but in meaning. In the way they moved through the world together, side by side, shoulder to shoulder. On the day the workshop officially opened its doors, Noelle stood beside Quinn in a sleeveless dress dotted with flecks of grease from helping install the final sign. Jace cut the ribbon himself, wearing goggles and a tool belt 2 sizes too big. After the crowd dispersed, Noelle turned to Quinn. "Do you ever miss it?" "Miss what?" "The life you had before me." He looked around at the building they'd built, the family they'd made, the future they'd chosen. "No," he said. "I think I was always waiting for you to show up." She kissed him in front of the empty street, the last light of dusk casting everything in rose gold. There were no cameras, no reporters. Just 2 people who had changed each other's lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. And from that moment forward, no part of their life felt small again. Not the garage, not the town, not the quiet nights when Jace fell asleep between them on the couch. Everything was full, and every day they chose it again. Together,